Good evening and welcome to all on behalf of the Sandeep and Geetanjali Maini Foundation. It's my utmost pleasure to have you join us for this compelling story of Bangalore, aptly titled Speaking Stones, which will be revealed by Udaya Kumar. Why Speaking Stones? Simply because they narrate a tale not known to many, even those who've been in Bangalore for years together. Uday Kumar is a passionate Bangalorean, an accidental historian, conversationalist. He loves and enjoys to research the lesser known aspects of the city's history and is currently working to secure and build more awareness about Bangalore's incredible inscription stones. May his tribe increase. These inscription stones are scattered around in our city. Many have been lost, but those that have been found, unearthed, so to say, have been primarily due to Uday Kumar's pursuit to document the incredible stories in these stones. What they are, what does it mean to our city, our state, culture, and heritage is mind boggling. And I'm going to let Udaya take us through it. But truth to tell, it's a fascinating project that he has embarked on since 2017, which many are unaware of. He also started a community movement called Inscription Stones of Bangalore to save these relics from being swallowed up by the fast-paced development of the city. You know, it's stories like these that tug at our hearts. And at SGMF, it resonates with what we desire to do. We've been following his work closely on social media platforms and felt it imperative to spread the reach and by extension bring more awareness on works of this nature. Diversity is one of the key areas at SGMF, and bringing in different speakers, dealing in diverse topics and on issues that matter has been one of our driving points. Apart from those who have joined us on Zoom, we also have a large audience watching the stream live on our Facebook page. A very big thank you to you all on the FB platform. Staying relevant is important. And in our endeavor to expand our listening audience, a genre which is increasing exponentially, I am delighted to announce that SGMF is also moving into the podcast domain. We are launching our podcast series, Expert Hour, with short, snappy, interactive sessions with well-known speakers. Archana Shenoy from the foundation will share more details on the same at the end of this session. Uday, it's a pleasure to have you here, and thanks so much for accepting to be here and enlighten us on Bangalore. But before I ask you to take the stage, I thank all of you for attending our webinars, and it's purely the encouragement and the feedback that we receive through mails and other social media platforms that makes us want to up the ante. While Uday Kumar is speaking, if any of you have any questions, kindly put them in the chat box, which will be taken up at the end of his presentation. We believe in the abundance of arts, and it's our sincere attempt to bring in artists, speakers, and practitioners from different genres under one umbrella. And that is what SGMF aims for. Thanks once again for all of you who are joined us this evening. And Udaya, up to you now to enthrall us with Speaking Stones. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sandeep Maini. So very kind words, very generous words. So I'll start with my presentation by sharing my screen. Sorry. Okay. So you should be now seeing my slides there. And again, thank you so much, SGMF, for the opportunity. It's truly a privilege to be on a platform like this, talking about my favorite topic, Bangalore, the history of Bangalore, to an esteemed audience like this. Thanks to everyone who's joined us, I believe, from all over the world in big numbers. For the next 60 minutes, I'm sure you will enjoy the talk as much as I will enjoy giving it to you all. Um, so let's begin with speaking stones. So before I do that, let me give a little bit of introduction to who we are and what we do, and that's shown in some way in this picture here. So the group that we operate under is called Inscription Stones of Bangalore, or Bangalore Nagarada Shila Shasana in Kannada. And what you're seeing here is typically kind of a depiction of one of the inscription stones, famous ones in Bangalore. So this logo is what we use, as the logo for our group. So we are a very small group of volunteers. We say about 8 to 10 people who've been through this journey for the last 3 years. What we do is, one, we are very passionate about Bangalore and its story, and we are very passionate about protecting its heritage in the form of inscription stones. There are quite a number of them in the city, and I'll talk about those. So this picture that you're seeing, incidentally, is from about 900 AD. So it's 1100-year-old inscription that's over there. And probably fewer than 1100 people have seen it, or maybe not even 1100, I would say less than 110 have actually seen it in person and know what it is. So we want to kind of communicate this message to everybody. We want to help in the preservation of these as well. My presentation will have a lot of images today. So it is going to be visually intense. If you are on a phone and you have the opportunity to switch to a PC monitor or a TV, best to do that quickly. You will enjoy the full power of the presentation at that time. If you have to be on a phone, then I would suggest you kind of orient it in the landscape mode so that you can see the picture in its full glory there. So at the outset, whatever I'm going to be showing you today, the disclosure is that these are not things that have been discovered by me or most of us in the group. They've largely been discovered by archaeologists, scientists, and researchers and other such people. All that I'm doing today is synthesizing all of this information and presenting it to you in a story, which I believe is unique and which is how the story of the city ought to be understood as well. Wherever I show photographs, I also show the credits. I also give you the credits there, who photographed it or who discovered it, and that kind of an information. Do look out for that as well. So the topics that I'm going to be covering today. So obviously, all of that I'm going to be talking today is going to be based on speaking stones, as Mr. Maini put it, or inscriptions as traditionally called. And using these as the anchor, I'm going to be talking about the localities of Bangalore, the history of Bangalore itself, lakes of Bangalore, the animals that have been known to have been here and documented in inscriptions, the religions, the religious rituals, temples, heroes, curses, science and technology in the city before it ever became a science capital, and a little bit about the dynasties that have ruled over this place as well. Now, this is a slightly different talk. It's not just about learning and hearing and then going on. Our project is something which is where we want you to participate. It's just not enough to see and listen and maybe learn a few things. We really want you to also engage in the same way as us and leverage this knowledge and participate. And I will indicate that as we go on as well. Okay, so let's get a little bit of common understanding on what are inscriptions, or Shila Shasana, or Shasana as it's called in Kannada. Okay, you probably have seen these when you visited some temples, either in Bangalore or elsewhere. Sometimes you may have noticed that the walls have something written on them in languages and scripts that may not be very evident. Nevertheless, you can recognize it for writing, and you may have wondered what it is. So these are what are called as inscriptions. And the easiest way and the simplest way to understand them today is to think of those as gazetted notifications of today. So typically when there's official government of India, government of Karnataka, or some government wants to notify something to people, it's released as a notification in the Gazette, right? And that's that's the way we do it today. Inscriptions were some things which are very similar. So they are actually records of something very significant that happened at that place at that time when the inscription was written. Okay. So it's a record. Lots of times these are official records in the sense they are edicts by the kings or noblemen. Otherwise, these are also events that are so important that they, somebody thought it worthwhile to write it on stone and make sure that the message that they are communicating stays for a long time there, which is why they're written on stone. But these inscriptions are not just found on in temple walls. They are also on, you may have seen them on lakes, you may have seen them in fields, you may have seen them in villages. So they are everywhere. It's just not that, they're in a temple or anything like that. So let me show you one inscription from the city of Bangalore. So I use interchangeably Bengaluru or Bangalore. It's just a convenience thing. In Kannada, I prefer to use Bengaluru. In English, I prefer Bangalore. So this is, this is a friend and me from about 3 years ago, or exactly 3 years ago, October to December time frame. What you're seeing here are 4 stones. Okay. The same 4 stones are shown on this photograph as well. So they're in a ditch. They are in a roadside ditch. You can see these people are looking down at that. And this is the close-up view of that. Okay. So you can obviously see that there is something that is carved here. And if you are able to look closely, you would also find something written over here on these 2 stones. Okay. These are documented and they're known to be inscriptions from the 16th century, this one and this one. So my friend Sudarshan and I were there to try and see a little bit more about this. But do notice the condition in which they are in. So this is in a roadside ditch, and the ditch itself is pretty dirty. There's a blue cart over here. This is actually an idli cart, dosa cart. Once the plates are used, they wash it over here. Okay. So this is typically the state of inscriptions in the city of Bangalore. Unknown, ignored, and I would say in fairly dirty conditions. Now, this photograph was in about December 2017. 6 months after that, we had elections coming up in state of Karnataka, the assembly elections. And typically, as happens during elections time, some work is done by the corporation authorities in filling up potholes, repairing roads, maybe repairing lights. And then, then you will find the local politician or the contestant showing up in your house, knocking on your doors and asking for your votes, saying, look, I got this work done for you. I care for your locality, etc. So something like that was what happened in HEBBAL as well in May. So they filled the ditch up with stones and they were going to fill it up with concrete and level the road. Okay. Now those stones that you saw are actually stones which are worshipped by the locals. While it is lying in a pretty ignored and dirty condition, once a year they worship to it, and they call them as Devarkallu, or God stones with gods on them. So they don't want to move it, they don't want to touch it, they don't want to destroy it, nothing. They want to just leave it as it is. So when this happened, the pit or the ditch was filled with stone jelly. They're going to concrete it. So one of the local boys there, who knew that the local HEBBAL residents would not do much in saving it, reached out to this bunch of boys. They go by the name of Revival Heritage Hub. They're JP Nagar based. and asked their help to secure and protect these stones. So these boys came over and convinced the local people that it was something worthwhile, to safeguard and protect these stones, and they took it upon themselves to do the job because the villagers would not touch it. So they removed the stone jellies and they dug out the stone. You can see it here. Okay, so when they lifted it out from the earth, to their surprise, this part of it was buried. They saw some writing underneath. Okay, so this writing was exposed to, was exposed to sunlight or became visible at that point in time. These boys had some ideas about inscriptions, and they knew how to kind of highlight it as well. What you do is, you apply some flour on that, wheat flour or something like that, and you can see the characters stand out. This is what they did, and this is a photo from that evening. So right away, they could guess that this was something that was old, and then they shared that photograph with an eminent epigraphist. An epigraphist is a person who is able to read these. He's very knowledgeable in the older scripts. And within a few minutes of that, Dr. P.V. Krishnamurthy identified this inscription to be from about 750 AD. Okay, so that stone that was lying in a ditch, ignored, and you may have also noticed that it had some pond stains on it. People are washing plates on that, over it. That actually was from 750 AD. Okay, and so this side, what you're seeing is a digital image of that. We do digital scanning of these inscriptions, and I'll show it in a while. Here you can very clearly see the writing as well. Okay, now this has been read and it's been deciphered, and this is what goes traditionally by the name of an inscription. Just to show you what an inscription contains, I'll go a little bit into this one in depth. Okay. And I do want everyone to also feel the energy and enjoy this as much as we do. This is the script. This is Kannada from 750 AD. Okay, what's written here is transliterated in modern Kannada. This is the same transliterated in English for you, or Roman letters for you. So I will read this out aloud. This is writing. This is how Kannada would have sounded in 750 AD. Okay. While I read this, do also try and see if you can identify some of these characters. It'll be fun, because you're trying to map back 1300 years and you're trying to read something which was written in Kannada 1300 years ago. Okay, so I'm going to start now. Please do try and read it along as well. So it says, line numbers are just for our convenience, they're not here. So it says, Swasti Shri Siri Purusha Maharaja Prithvi Rajyam Geye Perbolal Nadu Muvattu Man Pel Nagattara Arasarale Arakamorura Maindudam Kodandalayara Kittayana Rattavadi Kuchi Tandode Uralivi Dindraka Pukan Pergundiyu Kirugundiyu Tamma Kurul Niridodu E Kallum. So that's how Kannada would have been 1300 years ago. It's pretty easy to understand. I'll walk you through what it meant, because this is really the taste for history and taste for inscriptions and the takeaways from that as well. So it's basically saying, Swasti Sri Siri Purusha Maharaja Prithvi Rajyam Geya. So Swasti is like wishing everyone well, or good, things like that. Says Siri Purusha Maharaja. Says there was a Maharaja by name Siri Purusha. And he was Prithvi Rajyam Geye, which means he was ruling the earth. At that time, Perbolal Nadu Muvattu. There was a Nadu, which is like we say Tamil Nadu, or or Elanka Nadu, or some other Nadu. There was a Nadu called Perbolal Nadu. Muvattu. Muvattu is 30. So Man Pel Nagattara Arasarale means that Nadu chief was somebody called Nagattara Arasa. And then it says, Araka Morura Maidunam, Kodandalayara Kittayana. So Araka Morura is actually a clan. It's like, you would say today the Gaudas or the Smartas or Madhavas or something like that. That's a clan. Maindunam is brother-in-law. We call this Maiduna even today. Kodandalayara Kittayana. So somebody by name Kodandale, his brother-in-law Kittaya, Rattavadi Kuchi, means apparently the Rashtrakutas, Rattas or Rashtrakutas, they attacked HEBBAL, or rather, I'm sorry, Perbolal Nadu. He fought with them, and in that, Ur Alivinole, which means they had come to destroy Ur Alivu, destroy the Uru. He fought with them, and he reached Indraloka. Okay, so it was a martyr's death. Pergundi is a person, Kirgundi is another person. These two are his brothers. They had this stone installed. That's what it says. So it basically says during the time of Sri Purusha Maharaja, when Nagatara Arasa was ruling, was a chief of Perbolal Nadu, somebody by name Kittaya fought with the Rashtrakutas who had come to destroy his town and reached Indraloka. And in his memory, this stone was commissioned by his two brothers. That's really the simple word for word translation. But however, that's really, I would say, just taking away the bare minimum from this writing here. Let me highlight a few things so you understand how we develop the understanding of this city, how it's evolved and what happened here. Interestingly, what you are seeing here is really the earliest writing in the city, in the region of Bangalore today. We do not have anything written local over here older than this. So that writing on that stone was 13. So this writing here is 1300 years old. And that's the first evidence of literate people in the city. Now, if you think about it, Bangalore is famous the world over today for its literate population. It could be an engineer, it could be a doctor, it could be a software programmer, it could be a lawyer, it could be anybody. Fundamentally, they are all literate. And that literacy is what kind of helped them evolve into that profession, which is based on literacy. Contrast that with a population in a city who are famous as, say, weavers, or as, businessmen or traders, or it's all, they're all pundits who have a religious background. Bangalore is not like that. Bangalore is a city which is really the famous the world over today, not just India, for its literate citizens. And this is the first sign of a literate person in this region from 750 AD. So if you are somebody who really respects and regards education as important, for you, this is the Holy of Holies. Okay. That's one. And second, because this is the written record, Kittaya is the first named resident of the city. We do not know a person who's lived here by name before him. There are other names here, of course, but because the central character is Kittaya, we're calling him as the first named resident. And we like to call him as the first citizen of Bangalore. So if you were to draw up a list, like in a voters list, of all the people who have been here, the individual number one would be Kittaya in that list. Two. Thirdly, he is the first known martyr for us. Somebody who actually gave up his life for a locality in Bangalore today. So we revere our martyrs, we respect our martyrs, right? So this is our first martyr, 1300 years ago. Someone had come to destroy the place and he's given up his life for that. And while I said this is the first sign of writing in the city or literacy in the city, it even predates the first available book in Kannada. First available book, okay, it's not known to be the first written book. Kaviraja Marga, which is dated to be about 850, 900 AD. So 150 years before the first written book, this is writing from that period. So if you want to imagine how the characters in the book would have been at the time the author penned it, Rupatunga, he would have written in something like this, like that. Okay. So look at the takeaways now from this particular inscription. I know HEBBAL was around in 750 AD. Perbolal Nadu has become HEBBAL. It's the change in the language, and you're seeing how it's kind of evolved over time here. Perbolal is actually derived from Piriya Polal. This is la, which we don't use now. It used to be used until about 100 years ago. There's a ra and a la, which we don't use today. That's what you see here in this inscription. Piriya is big, and Polal is town. So literally, it is big town. Like we said, Dodbalapur, Chikbalapur, Dodpete, Chikpete. So this is Piriya Polal. Together, it becomes Perbolal. Now, in Kannada, over a long time, some changes have happened. So Perbolal has become Pervolal, and Perbolal, Perbol, Pebbol. Pa has changed to ha in words where pa is the first character. In other languages, sister languages like Tamil and Telugu, they have retained this. So you can see that in some examples. If you see, the word for grass, hullu in Kannada, pullu in Tamil. Tiger is huli in Kannada, puli in Tamil or Telugu. So they have retained the original form of, pa in the first, this one. In Kannada, it's morphed. So Pebbala became Hebbala. Hebbetu, all of those, essentially they start with a P or a Piri or a, like that. So this is how we know Perbolal Nadu actually is Hebbal, and Hebbal's been around from 750 AD. How old is the locality of Bangalore in Hebbal? It's 1300 years old. So if you were to ask anybody in Hebbal, how old do you think your locality is? I think the answer you would get is pretty old, sir, 100 years, 200 years. Not really. It's 1300 years old. How many localities of cities, global cities, metropolises do you know that have a 1300-year history like this? And this is evidence history. This is not folklore. This is not hearsay. This is evidence. Anybody can go, anybody can read this stuff and validate it themselves. So this being so special and extraordinary, we said, look, this is putting it up on a simple, ordinary pedestal is not what you want to do. It ought to be given a much more dignified, respectable home. And that is really something as grand as this. We said this is a Ganga style mantapa. It's Ganga because around 750 AD when Kittaya died, the rulers were Gangas, and they have their own unique style. So one of our friends and team members, Yashashwini Sharma, she's an architect. She also specializes in temple architecture. So she designed this mantapa to house that inscription. The oldest of the inscriptions, the rarest, the most special inscriptions, in the city of Bangalore. We crowdfunded this. And the idea was Kittaya and that inscription belongs to everybody. Everyone must participate, feel good about having, recognized the individual and contributed to it. And we did a crowdfunding campaign for this. And for January 14th of this year, this mandapa was completed. It's a magnificent stone structure built exactly as it would have been built by the Gangas in 750 AD. So some of the features are, it's stocky and short. It's not tall, it's not lofty, it's not, with lots of carvings on that. The Gangas were very simple, elegant, and that was their trademark, or that was the signature. So over here you see that Veeragallu. It is a Veeragallu because it's a hero stone. That person was a hero, and this stone is in his memory. It's a memorial stone for him. So it's in Kannada, we call this as Veeragallus. Seated now in this magnificent mantapa, alongside the other stones that were there, along the other inscriptions that were there. Okay. The stones now it's a crown jewel of residents of HEBBAL. Now that they know their own history a little bit, and I'm just showing you one example. There are other inscriptions which help you build a larger story of HEBBAL as well, about how old the lake is, who else lived there, what languages they spoken, is all what we can deduce. Just to give you in depth, in detail, what an inscription is, I took you through this example. So if HEBBAL is 750, is 1300 years old, I'm sure you will be thinking now, wherever you are in the city of Bangalore or whatever connections you have to Bangalore, how old is my locality? Okay, so I'm sitting in Rajesh Nagar and I want to know how old is Rajesh Nagar. Somebody may be sitting in GP Nagar and I'm sure they'll be wondering, how I want to know really the story of GP Nagar. We can do the exact same exercise, locality by locality. Okay, and I'm showing you a few examples here. This one is from Domblur. Domblur is the eastern end of MG Road, the area behind Trinity Church, Trinity Circle, the Command Hospital region. All that is Domblur. The most happening place in the city of Bangalore, considered to be a British, a cantonment developed area. So it's not really that old as what people would think. Not true. So in Domblur, you have this temple. It's called the Domblur Chokkanatha Swami Temple. Chokkanatha is actually, it's a Vaishnavite temple. So Srinivasa, Venugopala, whatever you want to call him. This is an inscription there from 1440. Okay, this is a close-up of that, and those who know Kannada can probably read this too. So you can see that Do, Dom, Ba, Lu. The Ra is in the next line. In 1440, Domblur existed. This is actually donation of certain lands to a temple, and this is a record of that. Because donation of land is obviously it's an official act. So it is a gazetted notification. It is something which says all this land now belongs to a temple, and all this land will be used for these purposes. So that's what this inscription is here. Okay. It says Dombaluru here because it says Dombaluru Chakkanatha Devarige. Sarvamanya Kodige Yagi. All these lands were given. Okay. So how old is Domblur? 1440. So if Domblur is 1440, how old is MG Road? I would say at least that much. So this is just one example. Actually, the first early record of Domblur in an inscription there, this temple has about 11 or 12 inscriptions. The earliest one is from 1200, which also records Domblur. So Domblur is at least 800 years old. Could have been earlier, but we don't have any evidence. Some other examples from a few other places. So this is from Devsandra. Devsandra may not be well known to a lot of people, but if you know MS Ramaya College and MS Ramaya Hospital, that's the place. If you know Indian Institute of Science, it's actually built on the lands of Devasandra. Okay, so there's an inscription stone in Tamil. This one is at the Balanjanaya Devasthana there, temple there. It's from 1376, and it has in it Devasandra written in it. It says the village of Devasandra is gifted to some Brahmins. Okay, so which means Devasandra has been around from 1376 at least. The other example I want to think about is Malleshwaram. The other way, the very common response is, which are the old localities of Bangalore? Basangudi and Malleshwaram, sir. How old is it? Sir, it was built during the plague. It was built for the plague. Yeah, part of it was built for the plague, but that's not really how old Malleshwaram is. In the KADU Malleshwara temple, beside the temple there, on a boulder is writing. You may make out some of it there in your screens. That one is from 1669. In that, it says the temple is referred to as the Mallapura Mallikarjuna Devasthana. Not as a KADU Malleshwara temple, it's a Mallapura Mallikarjuna temple. And like I said, Devasandra was IISc lands. Actually, there was a village there, Medar and Inganahalli. And that village lands were gifted away to IISc. So this is actually a record in some 1669 where Ekoji, the Maratha king, is gifting away Medar Ninganahalli to the Mallapura Mallikarjuna temple, which means Mallapura existed in 1669. Over years, it has morphed to Malleshwaram. Okay, so it's Malleshwaram has at least been around from then. 3-4 examples that I wanted to show you. But the city, if you look at all the localities of the city, and there are inscriptions all over here. These are all the place names. These are all the locality names that you can cull out from those inscriptions. I'll just give you a few examples. Begur. Begur may not be so well known. It's about 3 kilometers from Silk Board Junction in the direction of Electronic City. Not so far. It's a place where we spend a lot of time, right, at Silk Board. So we are spending a lot of time in Begur. The first recorded mention of Begur is from 517 AD. It's 1500 years ago by the same name, Begur, Bempur, Behur, slight variations of all of these. So Silk Board is the oldest locality in the city today, the region of Silk Board. 517 AD. Electronic City, new outskirts of Bangalore, not really. There's a place called Toguru there, which figures it's buried inside Electronic City. It's from 900 AD, it's mentioned in an inscription. HEBBAL I already mentioned to be from 750 AD. HSR layout. Inside HSR is a place called Yalakunte. It's from 900 AD. Now this is a word cloud. In fact, all of that I'm going to be talking about today is between the 5th century and the 16th century. Because all of it is derived from inscriptions. All of it is something that's very little known as well. So we talk about every nook and corner. How old is Ulsur? 1329. The size of the font here, smaller the font, younger it is, older the font, bigger the font, older it is. The Pinya region, Dot Bidarkal, from 750 AD again. The place where I'm seated right now, Rajajinagar. In Rajajinagar is a place called Juganalli. In our inscription, we may have a mention of Juganalli, and that's from 1386. I was born here, I was brought up here, but I had no clue until I started on this project that the place I live in is this old. Okay, and also very interestingly, I'll show you a pattern around here. You'll see quite a few sandras, Dodda Bomma Sandra. You'll see a Jakka Sandra. You may also have thought of, other sandras there, Allala Sandra, Channa Sandra, and all of these. They all have the Sandra is derived from Samudra. Samudra is a kind of exaggerated way of saying a lake there. So there was a big lake there. There is a big lake there. And that the name of the lake also is the name of the place. So when you say Bomma Sandra, there is a Bomma Sandra lake. When you say Allala Sandra, there's a Allala Sandra lake. So there's a Channa Sandra, there's a Channa Sandra lake. By default, the moment you see a Chandra anywhere, Sandra anywhere, you can be assured there is a lake or there was a lake. Okay. And you'll also see a few Mangalas and Agraharas. So these are Mangalas, Agraharas are Brahmin settlements. So you will see Agara, what we call as today is Agrahara originally, Huli Mangala, Kora Mangala, all these Mangalas are Brahmin settlements. Some of these also have, Kikuntes or Keres. So you may see, there'll be a Uru, there is a Halli, which are all evident. So the place names actually typically, also represent something over there. And then you have the slight, changes. Like I said, HEBBAL was Perbolal node, now it's changed to something else. Srini Vagilu is something I do want to call out. It's the EGL area on Inner Ring Road. It goes by the name of ST Tank Bed these days. Srini Vagilu originally went by the name of Sihi Nel Vagilu. Sihi is sweet, Nel is paddy, Vagilu is a village or a gate. So the place where they grew sweet paddy was essentially Sihi Nel Vagilu, has morphed to Srini Vagilu today. Okay. So each of these names also have an interesting story behind them. Just like we would say, guess what? Rajajnagar is named after Rajaji. JP Nagar is named after Jayaprakash Narayan. Similarly, each one of these have a very interesting etymology as well. Okay. Now this is one way of looking at it, but an easier way and a pictorial way of showing the same is this. It's the word map of the city. Okay. And I'm showing you here, color coded each of the wards. The legend shown here start from 500 AD and we finish at 1600 AD here. This region, if it is blue, is at least we know as a documented history from about 1000 AD. So you'll see the central part of the city. This is the Pete and the controlment area. Is the youngest. Okay, you'll see a lot of browns and reds and greens and yellows all around it. So Bangalore is a historic city because the localities of Bangalore have this kind of a documented past. And from all the research I've done, there is no global city anywhere in the world, when I'm saying global city, I'm talking about New York or Tokyo or London or Beijing or Shanghai or Delhi or whatever, Calcutta. Today, where we have such extraordinary evidenced history, locality-wise. Okay, now that's the story of localities. How about Bangalore? A lot of people have heard a lot of stories. What's the truth there? The truth is actually is hidden in this vicinity, in the temple of in the Panchalingeshwara, Nageshwara, Nagareshwara. A lot of names this goes by in Bangalore. In that temple, alongside on the south face, on the south side, you will find these 4 stones, one of which is protected under a shelter in a gazebo. Okay, this is this stone. Let me do a little bit of a switching over here. This is the photograph of the stone. How does it look really in life? Let me show you that as well. Okay. I'm switching windows, just give me a second. Okay. So as a photograph, this is the real stone. Okay. It's a 3D model of that of the inscription stone. So if you zoom in, you can see some writing on that. This is an extraordinarily high resolution digital model of this inscription stone. This is from 980, and this is very special for us. If you're not able to see much there, I'll kind of switch the colors there and show you what it is really. You can see the writing here now, slightly. This is artificial coloring to emphasize that. You probably can read this here. This is Ba. There's a dot here. This is Ga with the U at Takshara. There's a La. This is actually a La. And this is again a U at Tu. And this is a Ra. It says the 8th Kara, we would to write Be, we would write a line, would make a stroke here. But those days they would write underneath. So reading this together is Bengaluru. Okay. So Bengalura. Okay, from 980. What's written on the stone? Again, let's go through this in a little bit more detail. Just 1 second. Yeah. So what's written on that stone is what you're seeing over here. Okay. So it's 7-line inscription. It says Srimat Nagatarana Manevagatti Tipperunna Setti Bangalore Kalagodol Nagatarana Magan Buttannapati Sattan. Basically says Nagatara's son and adopted son died in the Bengaluru Kalaga, the battle, Bangalore battle. That gives the name of the son and the adopted son. In 890 AD, somebody's son, Nagatara's son and adopted son died in the Bengaluru battle. Which means how old is Bangalore? It's at least 1100 years old. How do we know that? Because of the stone, because of this inscription. When was this discovered? This was discovered and documented in 1915 by R. Nasimachar, who was the head of the Mysore Archaeological Department. Okay. And then he said, we may now discard the story of Veera Ballala, having gone to the hut of an old woman and eaten Bangalo. Say, anyone you ask, you say, where do you get the name Bengaluru from? They say, Benda Kaluru, sir. It's boiled beans, sir. In 1915, the most authoritative person possible on earth at that time, R. Nasimachar, actually said, let's forget this and move on. Most of us have not. We continue to give, dish out the same story as if it's factual. It is not. And instead of Veera Ballala, who was 1220 or whatever, we actually have evidence of Bangalore being around 300 years ago before that. But that's not the only one. So in 1248, in another temple, which is the Madiwala Someshwara temple in Tamil, we have Vengalur. If you know Tamil, you can probably read this. Slightly different from today's script, but it's still readable. In 1248, it was Bangalore. Ba, Wa changes in Kannada. So like I said, we say Beral, in Tamil it becomes Beral. So Bangalore became Vengalur in Tamil. Essentially, it's a record of gifting of some land below the tank of Vengalur to the god there in the Someshwara temple. These are not the only two examples. Okay, we have few more in literature and in copperplate inscriptions. In a 1433 Kannada copperplate inscription, we have the mention of Bengaluru alongside with other names, which means Bengaluru existed in 1434. And from the first mention, 1890 onwards, the place is referred in different ways, which shows that Bengaluru was evolving. In literature, there's a famous devotee from Bengaluru which features in this book called Shiva Tattva Chintamani, written by a Lakanna Dandesha. This man was a commander in Vijayanagar King. He says, there's a famous devotee from Bengaluru, and he describes the place. That's another instance. And then we have a Telugu, book, which again Bangalore features. One thing I do want you to all to observe. First reference was in 890 in Kannada. Second was in Tamil from 1248. And then we have a Telugu reference as well from around 1480. Three mentions of the city, the name Bengaluru in three different languages in about 400 years period. Long before we thought this city was actually founded. So Bengaluru was not really been around from 1537 as popular lore would have you believe. It's been around from 890 AD as well. And it's documented in multiple sources. Okay, that's a little bit about the antiquity of the city. Moving on, the lakes. I saw a little bit about the localities, a little bit about the lakes, and now you're seeing a little bit about the lakes of the city. 2-3 examples, and then I'll show you what's the bigger picture looking like. It's a lake called Kalkere, and there is a channel, irrigation channel out from this lake, which is called the Narasimha channel. Both of these we know are from the 13th, 14th centuries. Kalkere features in a 1314 inscription. In this, it features in this inscription in Parmanalli, where this lake, for some reason, has been breached and the lake is rebuilt. This is a record of that. It gives the names of people who are involved in that exercise and what they were gifted or donated by the king as reward and all of that. It also mentions this channel. There's an irrigation channel by name Narsimha Channel. This is a very famous birding place now. Bird lovers love this place because they found a lot of water birds here. Both of these are documented in 2 inscriptions, which means Kalkare is at least from 1314 AD. Other lakes, Jakkur Lake, very famous lake today. It's in fact one of the birding hotspots. There's about 200 birds that have been documented in this lake. It's mentioned in this inscription from Agrahara. Agrahara is adjacent Jakkur, from 1250 AD. It says the big lake. This is a Tamil inscription. It says Periyeri. Refers to Jakkur Lake as Periyeri. It's pretty big. It's about 200 acres even today. Okay. If we did a similar exercise of culling out all the lakes of the city, where would we be? These are all the pre-16th century lakes of Bangalore. HEBBAL is the oldest. It's from 800 AD. So when you're traveling on that flyover, the next time, do look out. You're looking at a water body which is at least 1200 years old. By the way, the topography of Bangalore means all lakes are man-made. It doesn't matter where you see a lake, somebody built a bund over it and water gathered there and it kind of developed into a lake. We have no natural lakes in the city of Bangalore. Agara Lake is from 870 AD, we know. Except for 2 here, which is Domblur and Nagsettihalli. All other lakes exist to this day. We rue over the fact that Bangalore was a city of lakes and we lost all of them. Not true. We have some very historic lakes which we don't recognize for. And we ignore. Similarly, if I were to draw a similar story for other things over here, what kind of animals frequented this place? That's also recorded in inscriptions or hero stones. This one is from Banshankari, second phase. This is actually called a jinke bete or a deer hunt. So there's a hunter who's gone hunting deer. And something has happened, either the arrow struck him or somebody struck him by arrow by accident or whatever, and he died. This is a memorial stone erected. Unfortunately, we have actually painted it over. It ought to look something like this in its native condition. Some artist decided to improve the visualization. He painted it over. So this is the deer hunter, and this is a deer here. And after his death, he's in heaven, being served by angels there on top. That's a pictorial depiction of his death. In Tada Institute, Indian Institute of Science, in the middle of Tada Institute, we have Huli Bete Virgalu. Huli Bete is in a tiger hunt. Either a tiger is turned man-eater or people have gone out hunting for whatever reasons. And someone has died. In their memory, in their honor, Virgalu has been erected. This is in Indian Institute of Science. This one is from BTM layout, right opposite BTM bus stand. Can you imagine, can you imagine tigers roaming around in the area of Bangalore? Not so far away. We still have tigers in Bannerghatta, and there have been sightings in Savandurga. At one time, they were in the inner areas of the city as well. We have mentions of other things. We have elephants and other instances too. I just took out these 2 because these are special today, and we kind of raise eyebrows when we say deer in Bangalore or tiger in Bangalore. Okay. How about languages? How old are some of the languages of Bangalore? 3 examples of inscriptions in the city. First one's from Kannada. It's common. Tamil. A lot of people think Tamil is a new language in the city. Not true. It's been around for a long time, from 1307. This is one instance from 1307. And Telugu. Let's see. This is no pattern to it. There's inscriptions which are 1 kilometer away, 1 year away in different languages. So this is a kind of animation of various inscriptions in the district. This is slightly bigger. So you'll see, this is the years. You'll see this go up, and these are the languages. So it's a beautiful animation that shows which language was in use in which location in and around Bangalore. So if you notice, this year bar is going up here. The blue dots are Kannada, the red dots are Tamil, and the others are shown in white. Others are mostly Telugu. So you will see around starting 1000 to almost, till about 1600, where this time ends, Tamil and Telugu continue to be used as well. What does this mean? It means this place has been multilingual for a millennium. What impact does it have on the city today? You'll find native Bangaloreans are fluent in 4 or 5 languages, very comfortable. In fact, many of them speak 3 languages at their homes. And the reason for that is this history. About a millennium years ago, 3 languages have been used here. Slightly different from the way we think about states today. States are organized on state boundaries, and we assume anyone within Karnataka is only Kannada speaking. It's not true for Bangalore, at least. It's multilingual, it's a love place, it's cosmopolitan. All of that is because there's a legacy of that. Okay. And again, there's a similar legacy about religions too. What religions are being practiced here? So we have examples of Shaivites in inscriptions from 1350, Vaishnavites. This is a Vaishnavite inscription. You can see the Sudarshan Chakra and the Shanku and all of that. You can also, the first instance of Vaishnavism here is about 10th century. It's not that, it's documented. Don't believe it to be, that's when it started. It's the first evidence that we have. We also had Buddhists here. A place called Rajghatta has a Vihara and a Chaitya. It's about 20 kilometers, 25 kilometers from where I am today, closer to Hesarghatta. It's from the 4th century, 3rd century. And then we have the Gram Devatas as well. This is Durga, by the way. So she stands, Mahishasura Mardini or Durga. We have an inscription there, which helps us date first from 750 AD. This is in Bhupsandra, which is adjacent to HEBBAL. Jainism was very popular here. This is an inscription, and there's a lady here. So the Jain way of giving up death, of giving up life is sannyasam or salekana. There's a record of that. So we have Shaivites, Vaishnavites, Buddhists, Gramdev, the local, village deities, Jainism, name it. Which is also one of the reasons why this place is so harmonious from a religious perspective. There's no invasions. There's no kind of forced campaigns. Everyone's been living here together for a long time. Rituals. This is 3 examples from 3 locations. Sati, unlike they would show you in the movies, is not very common, not forced either. So this is a Sati Virgalu in Kodigehalli, just behind HEBBAL Lake. You can see the man and woman here, and you can see the lady with her hand raised up, which is an indication of Sati. So her husband has died, and the way it's been depicted, he's died in a battle. So you can see the body here. She is chosen to go along with him to wherever, and that's the Sati Viragalu. It's a heroic act. These are Atma Bali Badanas, or self-sacrifices. So typically, when there was a pestilence, there was a flood, there was a famine or whatever, it was the practice to pray to the god, a local deity, and say, please help us rid this, and we will be, we will give our own lives. So this one's from Domlur. This is facing the Domlur Chaknath Swami temple that I showed there. And these people are given away their lives. How you can see that is they're holding a knife against their heads, and they chopped off their own heads is what it's showing here. This is another similar example from Dodgubi. We have a few examples around the city. So these are religious sacrifices that have happened in Bangalore, heroic ones, for the benefit of the city or the region or the village or whatever it was. And the temples of the historic temples of Bangalore. So I already spoke about Begur temple. This is a 1100-year-old temple, Ganga style temple. It's a living temple. People pray here every day. The deity is worshipped and largely not modified. It's one of those rare places anywhere, I would say, in the country where you can see a 1100-year-old structure, fairly good condition. and it's not in ruins. It's still a healthy living temple. It's in Bangalore, very close to Silk Board. We have beautiful temple in the NAL Belur campus near ISRO. There's a Shiva temple there from the 13th century. There's a Veer Shaiva Mata from again 1307. Beautiful place, must visit if you like to see historic places in the city. The Madivala Someshwara temple, where I said that Bangalore inscription, Tamil inscription is in from 1248. That temple is that old at least. Few more temples we have in Kacharkanhalli, Singapura, which is Vidyaranapura, and in Bangalore that I already covered. Okay, running short of time, so I'll skip a few slides. I do want to show a modern day hero as I show the other heroes of Bangalore. Do notice. So those are, that's Dr. P.V. Krishnamurthy, the epigraphist who deciphered the HEBBAL inscription. This is Professor Narasimhan. These are modern day heroes because these are the people who read 7th, 8th century Kannada. They were deciphering Veeragallu in Dasaralli there. You can see the condition in which it is in. It's really in a garbage pit. Okay. All those things that I've shown you, and let me show you one more example of a Veeragallu and the condition in which it is in. So this is a Veeragallu. This is in Saraki, behind JP Nursing Home. It's from 10th century. As you can see, it was actually embedded in a compound wall. It's a residential layout, garbage strewn around, cars blocking the view. And not even the neighbor next door knows what this is. It's an extraordinary sculpture. It depicts a king, a queen, and his, and people serving him, all in a dance and a music setting. And in some political battle, they've died, and basically they're showing you them all in heaven. So, from the 10th century, lining a compound of a house. Not even the neighbors know about it. Spoke about this already. The deer hunting, this one in Veeragallu in Banshankari. Yeah. So these are some of the heroes. And there's also a beautiful thing. We all like to curse, right? Yeah. So we have our own favorite curses. All of these inscriptions were actually donation records to somebody or to a temple or someone. How do you protect that? How do you make sure that it's complied with? Nobody steals them or cheats them. So the end of an inscription, after detailing all the donation, there is a curse. It's actually two, this one. There's a curse and there's also a benevolent or a line there. And I've picked two examples to explain to you. This is an inscription in Pattandur, which is near the Sai Baba Ashrama in Whitefield. It's a record of building of the Pattandur Lake. Pattandur Lake is a small lake behind ITPL. It's from 1043 AD. That's how old that lake is. It's in Tamil. And there's some lands donated for the upkeep of the lake as well. End of that inscription is a line which says, and let me read this aloud. It says, "He who thinks of injuring this charity shall incur the sins of those who have died between the Ganges and the Kanyakumari." So we believe that, when you commit a sin, you also accumulate, when you commit a sin, you also accumulate some punishment, right? So it says, for anyone who's injuring this charity, all the people between Ganges and Kanyakumari, all their sins becomes yours. It's not just what sins you committed. It's a cumulative sin of the cumulative punishment for all the sins of people living between these two places. And it says, he shall be the husband of his own mother. So, in Kannada we say Thai Ganda, right? It's a sinful act. And for that, you will be, afterlife or after your death, you will you'll be punished for that. Whatever is the equivalent punishment for that is what you will suffer for enduring this charity. That's for the sinners. What about those people who protect it? It says those who protect it, they will prosper. And it's also defined in what way they prosper. Okay. Sometimes this is in local language. Sometimes this is in, Sanskrit as well. So it's another example from Sanskrit, which I'll skip for now. Now, all of these, most of these are Hindu lands, Hindu donations, right? But by the 16th century, Muslims were here. A Muslim is not going to be worried about sin, a curse in some smriti or, in some Hindu scripture, because he believes in the Quran. So in the instance of 16th century inscriptions, they call out and lay out a curse for Muslims. And this is from Malleshwaram. I'll read this out for you. It says, Koti Chandra Surya Ulla Kalavu Dharmakke Kottanu. So long as the sun and moon are there, this was given away as Dharma. E Dharmakke Vakra Madidavaru Kattiya Kagiya Chandalara Jalmadali Huttuvaru. Katti is katte, donkey. Kagi is crow. Chandala is, Chandala is the caste which is in the cemeteries. So those who destroy this or who harm this dharma donation, they'll be born as crows and donkeys and chandalas. But if I'm a Muslim, I don't care. I don't believe in all this. What if I'm a Muslim? So it says, Musalmanaradawaru makkeyalli handiyatinda. Muslims believe it's eating a pig is bad, is sinful. It says, if you do the same thing in Mecca, whatever sin you accumulate or you gather, that's what you will get when you destroy this, or when you steal that donation. What about Brahmins? It says, Brahmana, Chaitra, Vaishya, Sudra, Kasiyalli, Gova Konda Papake Hogwa. In Kashi, it's, Hindus believe killing a cow is bad. So the equivalent of killing a cow in Kashi, the holiest of holy places for Hindus, that's the sin that you accumulate when you steal this charity. Okay. So I'm short of time. I'll skip all of this. I'm on my last slide now, last two slides now. The dynasties were ruled here. Everybody has been here in this region. Some of these dynasties you may be familiar, you may not be familiar with. The Gangas were the longest rulers in this region. So they for about 700 years, from 300 to 1000 AD. And then followed by the Rashtrakutas and the Cholas and the Hoysalas and the Vijayanagar kings. This is all again pre-16th century, 17th century I'm talking. All of them have left their marks in some way or the other. In the name of a place, the place name, or the building of a temple, or the memory of a hero or a Veera, all of that. Similar stories we can cull out, similar information we extract. Paucity of time, I won't be able to go in. Which is the first school in Bangalore? Documented in inscription. Go look up the oldest Agrara and you'll know which school it is. Which is the first mall in the city? Which is the first Santa in the city? It's documented in inscription. That's your first mall. So on. Who lived here? What professions? What castes were here? How is this place organized? Today we have wards, right? Similarly, there must have been something else in earlier years. There was, and we get that from inscriptions. What kind of dances, what kind of music was popular here? We can figure that as well. I'm not touching all of that at all, but this is all the amount of detail we have. We have all this thanks to this one man. His name is Benjamin Levi Rice. Thanks to him, he documented about 1,500 inscriptions in the district of Bangalore in this book called the Epigraphy of Karnataka, and did it in 1905 with a small team of people then. And thanks to him, we know all of this story. Sadly, since he documented it, very few people have gone back to those places and understood what state they are in or what they see. And this is what we want to communicate through our events here. And we really want to go beyond this. I'm sure you enjoyed the talk. We really want you to go beyond this and participate in it. You can do it in many ways. You can build wiki pages. You can do photo documentation of it. You can write short stories. People have fictionalized the events in those inscriptions and developed short stories. These are very nice, beautiful stories that are being featured in magazines today. They are being enacted in schools and colleges. This is how we perpetuate the memory. This is how we secure the history or the heritage that we have inherited as well. And we do this in a digital conservation mode as well. And I showed you one or two models there. So this is an old lady, and I think she helped us retain these stones. This is from Gulak Malay. She's taken care of this single-handedly. This is her land. She's not destroyed it. She prays to this. She wouldn't allow anyone to go near it and destroy it. She's protected it for us. Tells us the story of the city. We need to pass it on to our children. We have a beautiful and probably the best story in the world to tell for any global city. We definitely need to secure it. We definitely need to retain it and celebrate it as well. Okay. And you will find you are very active on social media. Two places are popular. Let's say Facebook, the Inscription Stones of Bangalore group. Do join us there. There's a few posts every day there. Some are Bangalore related. Some have kind of gone broader as well, and on Twitter. So these are two platforms where you can participate with us. You can reach out to me as well directly. Very, very easy to find me. Do a search for me by my name and you'll get me. So while the story is good, most of these stones are getting destroyed. They're being used to build the foundations. They're being used as jelly. They're being thrown away. I think it's such a waste. We have such incredible heritage and we are not using it at all. I think we need to know the story. We need to protect the story. And we need to celebrate the story as well, like we have done in the case of HEBBAL. We need to do that for every one of those 1,500 inscriptions in this district of Bangalore. Okay, so thank you so much. I'll take questions now.
Thank you, sir, for those very, very unique stories that you told us. I think most of us who are on the platform today, and we have a huge number who are watching on Facebook as well, are hearing this for the first time. So before I start with the question and answer session for you, let me please request everybody who is online, if you have a question, please use the Q&A box to type it in now. I'm going to give Mr. Udaya Kumar a 1-minute breather. He's been speaking for an hour and 10 minutes, right now. So while I have your attention, I'm just going to quickly share screen and introduce you to our podcast platform. Please stand by while I play for you for the very first time our podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Expert Hour, brought to you by Sandeep and Gitanjali Maini Foundation and its principal patron, John Delano. I am Archana Shenoy from the foundation. We work to preserve Indian history, heritage, art, artists, and culture. This series of talks deals with subjects that are light, interesting, inspiring, and invigorating. To borrow Mahatma Gandhi's words, a nation's culture resides in the hearts and in the soul of its people. So join us as we take you through the exciting world of art and artists, delve into the inquisitive mind of authors and scholars, peer through the lens of photographers to capture magical moments, and explore the vibrant melting pot of cultures that defines India and what makes up the Expert Hour.
So those are our podcasts that are soon going to be live, probably as early as Diwali. Please do follow us on Facebook. Our handle is at SGMF 2020 on Facebook and on Instagram. And you can grab our teasers and all our announcements with regard to our podcasts then and there. So we have some questions flowing in, and I shall begin whenever Mr. Udaya Kumar is ready to come back on screen.
I'm ready.
Okay, perfect. You are my top candidate for the next podcast. I must tell you that. What interesting stories you have to tell. Such amazing information that most Bangaloreans don't know. We pride ourselves on silly things like being, the pub capital of India, nightlife capital, shopping capital, you name it, and we're a capital for something or the other. But nobody has ever thought that we have such incredible history behind us.
Absolutely.
And if we had more storytellers like you, I'm sure we can also build the wave a little more and have more and more people join such movements, which are educative, informative, and just instill in every Bangalorean such a huge sense of pride because of the fact that our history is so old and that there are people like you who are working to preserve it. So thank you very much for what you do. I have some questions here, which I will now begin to take. Manoj Sengupta asks, do these installations have some placard in English as a guide for visitors?
No. In fact, many of them are not even in any presentable state. They are lying on the edge of a road. They're lying in, the setback of some house. So not all of them are even places where you could visit. But what we have done as a project is we identified these and then we shifted them to slightly better locations in schools, parks, grounds, and places like that. In a few, we've been able to put up placards, but we've not been able to do it in all of them. We do dream of doing that, and we do need people's support for doing it. If you live in the vicinity of an inscription, do find out. It's all on a Google map. Look for Inscription Stones of Bangalore Google map, and do sponsor it, or just go ahead and do it yourself. There's a placard in English, in Kannada, in whatever languages you want. Needs to be done.
So this is not an effort that is being supported by the Karnataka government at any level?
Yeah. So we work with the Karnataka State Archaeology Department, who are really the custodians for this. However, the Karnataka Archaeology Department is extremely poorly funded. Despite all that you may hear, they are caretakers for anything and everything historic in the state of Karnataka. And their budget is just sufficient to meet their salary needs. And the salaried people are in their double digits, in the low double digits. Okay, so they don't have the capacity really to do any one of this, but they are extremely supportive and they work along with any citizens or citizen groups who want to do all of this. So much so that they are more than happy to call, if we call ourselves an extension of that department too. So, yeah, the truth is that they don't have the resources to do it, even if the desire and the intention is there.
That is good to know that at least the desire and the intention is there. It gives private organizations the impetus to then participate and try and, mobilize something.
Yes.
A little more. So thank you for that information. Syed Muin asks if you can give him a best reference book of Karnataka history, which is readable in English.
Honest answer, Syed, don't read books, read inscriptions. There are books of inscriptions. The reason for that is, see, what you think of as history is largely political history, which is the story of kings and queens. Now, all that I told you in the last 1 hour and 10 minutes, not a mention of a king or queen, but it's still history of the city. You would not find this in a book. So there is political history, there's a social history, there's economic history, there's all kinds of things. There is not enough work done for me to say, read this one book and you'll get it all. It's still a lot of work in progress, a lot of documentation around kings and queens, yes, but all the other aspects, how did a common man live? What professions were there? What was the currency? What was the taxation? What issues did they face? These are not so detailed. There are specialist books, and none of those, as far as I know, cover Karnataka at large. Do start reading inscriptions. You will love them, and you'll write a book yourself.
Like, who knew sweet paddy existed as a crop?
Absolutely.
Such interesting points, fine points that you're able to bring out through your research and study, which most of the history textbooks that are prescribed to school children just completely miss.
Yeah, because it's a very high level abstraction of thousands of years in one chapter. What can you do in that? You can't do much. You can't detail a place, you can't detail the people there, you can't do anything. And you're talking about geographical areas like Karnataka, which spans 1,000 kilometers, broad. There's a million stories there. How big a book? In a 500-page book, what can you write there? Not much. Yeah,
just from that same point, I just want to ask you, if textbooks were to concentrate on more local stories, like,
yes.
Do you think students and youngsters would then be more incentivized to research and study more about history?
A brilliant question, Archana. And we do field events. We ask people to come out to a site, and then we explain what's written there and all of that. often do this for school teachers and children. And
Yes.
this is what they always say. Sir, why is this not in our textbook? Why is this not taught to us? It's a sad state of affairs. We ought to start local first and then global later. We started the other way around. Everybody knows Alexander the Great. Nobody knows Nagatara, who's the person who's helping us know how old this place is. Bangaloreans don't know, Bangalore students don't know that. You're right. We ought to kind of change the way we think about it. It's a systemic change. It'll take time. Nevertheless, it's needed.
Yes, I think it's very needed considering the times we are living in and the way life is changing. I think this becomes very, very, very important for us to concentrate on. So thank you for those answers. Mr. S. Vishwanath compliments you on the talk and he asks, would the Begur temple well be as old as the temple itself? Are there inscription stones mentioning wells as they do lakes?
So difficult question. Whether that particular well in the temple is as old as the temple itself, I don't know. Possibility is there though, while the structure itself may have changed over times, the well has collapsed or it's been developed in different ways, the spot may still be the same. Are there any inscriptions? I'm sorry, what is the question there? Was there any?
He wanted to know whether there are any inscriptions on wells like there are inscriptions on lakes.
In the city of Bangalore, no. None that I know of. But I'm fairly certain there must be other inscriptions elsewhere which do record wells in temples and wells in other kinds of wells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also have some questions that are coming in on Facebook. There's one that's just somewhere up on my screen. A lot of complimentary messages, saying that they didn't, know these kind of things existed. Mr. Ravi Shankar Srinivasan from Facebook has asked, how you stepped into epigraphical studies and more specifically, a large number of lithic records that are spread across the city. So he would like to ask how you actually got into this line of study.
Okay. So the place I'm sitting now is called Rajaj Nagar First Block. The days when I was a kid and growing up, this was better known as Ketmarnahalli. Okay, so it's first K block in Rajaj Nagar today, the K standing for Ketmarnahalli. About 3 years back, somebody told me there was an inscription in Ketmarnahalli from the 13th century. So I've been a Bangalorean and I worked very hard to stay in Bangalore all my life and passionate about the place and a little bit about the history too. So kind of, kindled my interest. I thought Rajaj Nagar was about 50, 60 years old. But suddenly to realize Ketmarnahalli, which is where I grew up and a lot of friends from, 600 years old was a shocker. So I kind of tried to identify where this is documented, is the stone there and all of that. And that's when I understood the word inscription stones and that there were so many in the city telling these stories. Sadly, the Ketmarnahalli inscription stones been destroyed. It was by the lake here. The lake's been built over as well. So the stone was destroyed and it was very, very, I would say, depressing for me and my friends around here to realize that something of that type was so casually destroyed. We know when it was destroyed, we know how it was destroyed and all of that. Because it was built over by house. Okay, so as soon as we realized that this is what's happening all over the city, we started kind of tracking, identify where are the other inscriptions, what state are they in, can we secure them, can we at least ensure that they don't meet the same fate as the Ketmarnahalli stone. Let's also tell the beautiful story of inscriptions, or the city of Bangalore has documented inscriptions to everyone. That's how it started.
It could be such a huge attraction for, people who want to know more.
Yeah, and just to tell you, expand on what you said, before, so the friends around here, 5, 6 of us who all over the world, spread all over the world, typical Bangalorean style. When we heard about this in our WhatsApp group, we already had donated money to the cause of putting it up on a golden pillar in Navarang Circle. That's how we feel about our homes, our places. That's true for every nook and corner of the city. That has to be celebrated in that way. That's what I realized, at least in HEBBAL to some extent. Yeah.
So Vanamala Parthasarathy asks if there is any inscriptional evidence about Kagadaspura Lake.
No, there's none. None that I'm aware of. I won't say I know every single inscription that's mentioned, lake mentioned there. I think I do most of them, but it isn't there. Now, do remember this though, if there's no inscriptional record of a lake, it doesn't mean it's a new lake. It's just that, no, that wasn't documented. And all lakes of the city, you can be sure are at least 500 plus years old, except the very popularly known ones, which are, yeah.
Sankey Tank.
Sankey Tank, Alsur Tank, the majestic bus stand that we do over, or Sampige, where Kantira Stadium was. All these are young infant lakes today. The older ones, they are still there. We just don't have a date around it. That's about all. I do want to suggest one thing though. All of these inscriptions have been discovered. If you feel good about it, go search around the boundaries of Kagdaspura Lake, especially on the tubus. Tubus are the lake outlets, exterior gateways for letting out water for irrigation from the lake. They carry inscriptions often. And the lakes are also places where breaches would have happened, repair would have happened. Somebody was documented it. The stone is very likely there, but we don't know. So for all you know, there may be inscriptions there which you would discover and help date that lake.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Mr. Bharat Anantramaya asks if there is a possibility of your group conducting walking tours around the city to show these stones and explain their history.
Yes, Bharat, we used to do this until Corona came down on us. Almost every month we used to do 2 events called Know Your Neighborhood events. Every nook and corner of the city where there are inscriptions we gather. It's usually a 2 to 4 hour event. In depth, we explain just that locality, just that inscription. We call these Know Your Neighborhood events. Hopefully in a few months when all of this settles down, we'll resume them.
That'll be amazing.
Yeah.
Syed Moin has one more question. He wants to know if you can tell him a little more about the etymology of Okalipuram, which is next to the Majestic railway station. He says he's searching for a little more information about the area history of the name, history of the area name.
Okay. I don't know this, but I'll tell you something a little bit very interesting though. There's MG colony there in Oklipura, which is just behind the railway station. Mahatma Gandhi colony is railways land. Inside there, you will find 3 hero stones, 3 Veeragalos, which are from the 13th century and the 12th century. So I don't know the name, whether it's from that period or not. As you can know, obviously, Oakley is coming out from the caste name and all that. Nevertheless, how old is that place is in some way indicated from those Veeragalos there. They don't have inscriptions though. Unfortunately, hugely developed regions these are, the railway station and bus stand and all of those. So a lot of it's been destroyed. Even in the railway station itself, inside the railway station, there's an 11th century Veeragalu by the post office. There's Ali Mara there. Do go look at that. It's worshipped like a god. You wouldn't recognize it for what it is today. It's 11th century. And in Oklipura, the MG colony has Veergalus from the 13th century. So if you are from there, you have a lot to be proud of.
Amazing. And Mr. S. Vishwanath is reminding me to let everyone who's listening know that you have been conferred the Bangalore Citizen of the Year award. And that they're very proud of the fascinating work that you do. I must say, so are we. It's amazing that we've gotten to know you. And there is so much more that we can learn and, understand from you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Shankar Balu sends a question just now saying, thank you for the well-presented talk on inscription stones. There is an area near HEBBAL called Dandina Kodigehalli, even till recently. Was this area really a battlefield for a very long time? Possibly even the battlefield where Pergola Kittaya might have met his end?
No. Okay, 2 things. One is Kodigehalli, the name itself is actually derived from an inscription there. I skipped the slide. In Kodigehalli, the Anjaneya temple there's an inscription stone. Please go see it, which is actually a donation of the village Virupakshapura. There's a Virupakshapura inside Kodigehalli today. To the Esarghatta Someshwara temple. So donation, the other word for donation in Kannada is Kodige, right? So that's the Dana Shasana or the Kodige Shasana itself has morphed into the name of the place Kodigehalli. Okay, what was the Kodige was that? And that's the inscription there. As far as Dandina Kodigehalli, Dandus were all over the place. Wherever you see Palyas, the Sultan Palya or all of these, Palyas were places where small military regiments would have been stationed. Quite possible there was a Dando there. Actually, I don't know this. First time I'm hearing about it. As far as Pergolal Kittaya goes, no, the Veergallu is usually installed in the place where this man died, or it's there. It's an attack on the Uru itself. So this is in the village gate. So as you're going up the flyover on HEBBAL from Mekri Circle towards the airport, look to your right. You'll see a mosque just as you're climbing up the flyover. Behind it is actually HEBBAL village proper. And that's where the Kittaya Veergallu is. Very likely he died in that place, not so much as Kodigehalli. And Kodigehalli name anyway is not derived from, the Dandu of Kodigehalli is not derived from Kottaya at all. So 700-year gap between the two.
So interesting points that you have made here. I think many of us are going to have a lot of questions, and if I'm not mistaken, we're going to have a lot of magnifying glasses within people's hands. They're looking around for inscription stones, like you pointed out these locations for us to look at. But thank you for a very informative talk. I'd also like to tell you that this is the first time when we've had a session that we have had 94% of its attendees say that your talk is excellent.
Wonderful.
So we launched a poll right in the middle of the session, and this is the statistic that we received from it.
Okay. Actually, one request. I think these questions, if you can, if they are already on Facebook, I'll answer them.
Yes.
Offline. If they're on Zoom, if you can either copy them there or ask people to post it there, I'll answer them after the event as well.
So whatever questions come to us during the session, if you have not answered them, I can share the transcript with you. Yeah. And you could always take them offline post the event. And I would also go one step further and tell people, if you have anything you would like to ask Mr. Udaya Kumar, you have not been able to reach out to him, do reach out to us and we'll do the needful and see that he gets the information from us. You can email us. Our mail IDs are on our website. Our website is www.sgmf.co.in. And there are 2 mail IDs there. So feel free to write into us there. Drop us a message on Facebook or Instagram. We are always online and checking. So we do have a pretty large following on Facebook as well. And yes, so that's about it.
One closing comment.
Yes.
There's this thing about learning. You learn a third from hearing to somebody, a teacher, whatever. You learn by discussion, a third of that. And the third is by actually going and doing.
Yes.
So whatever you heard today and whatever we discussed today, I would say is 2/3. There's still a third, which is very valuable. If you go out there, see those inscriptions, touch it, feel it, learn it, that's really going to be the best return on investment for me for the talk here today.
Thank you so much for sharing time. We know you are extremely busy with all of the work that you are doing, but your session has been really, really informative for us. And for a foundation like ours that is so passionate about preserving what we can of Bangalore and Karnataka, I think you become one of the very, very important reef of people whom we have associated with.
Thank you. Most happy to do.
Thank you so much for your time. And it was really good. And I do have a few more questions that are coming in, but it's 8:05. I think we'll close the session, but I will ensure that you get these questions to you, and you could email IDs will be sent along with them. So you can definitely stay in touch with the people for anything.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.